Hello and welcome to the Empowered Couples Podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is what creates emotional connection and intimacy.
So none of us want to feel like roommates with our spouse. Now, there certainly might be seasons where you feel that. That's okay. We're going to talk about it. But when you think about what makes your partnership unique, isn't it intimacy? Right? You might feel really close with your best friends, but we would all hope that there's truly another depth of connection that we get with our spouse. And that's also what opens up physical intimacy and really being able to withstand challenges in your life together. Now, before we get to the points, I want to just share personally that we're in a very full season of life. I mean, of course, there's always things going on. I don't think any of us get to a place where we're like, wow, I really just have nothing going on. I'm, able to relax all day long, right? There's always stuff in life. But this season is really quite full, and definitely with lots of great fun things and things we welcome and wanted to create, like time with our family.
You want to share? I feel like you're holding back here.
Well,
keeping it vague for the listeners.
there's definitely like just the normal life things, like for example, just loving our new home and time with our daughter. Like those are all things that are, yes, part of our life being full. I guess, are you talking about this new vacation house that you're mentioning?
Yeah,
trying to
it's one
refer
of them.
to?
I mean, that's exactly right. We are moving on. I guess it would be a longer story, huh? We're just moving on a new, smaller summer place in Ohio, which is where my family's from. Many different reasons for that. One of them being we would like our daughter to know more of her family. We do have a great network in Arizona, of course, but no real family. And so being able to have a place where we can really create those family ties and connections for her and ourselves, that's been really big. So we did find a place like a mile from Lake Erie.
And because I said I am not going to do another Arizona summer.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised here.
I agree.
It is scorching. It's almost October 1st, and it's still supposed to get to 106 degrees this week.
I mean, that was 114 yesterday. And
yeah. So I just can't do summers. And we also don't want our daughter to have to be inside all summer. So all that to say, that is something very exciting that we're going to have this new vacation house and we're going to be able to spend our summers there. And that just happened. And there's other reasons we moved on that. There's some ways that it helps a family member of ours. And so that's exciting. And that creates a lot of paperwork and things to do. We also have some unexpected plot twists that have shown up in our lives. I'll kind of keep some of those vague and private. But we all experience plot twists. I was talking with a friend a couple days ago because they also have had several plot twists come up. And that's the thing about life, right? There's, yes, goals we set. There's things we work on. There's things we want to create. And then there's the things that you could not have anticipated. You didn't write them in your journal and they're there. And some of them are exciting blessings and others are challenging and they add stress to your life. And so we have like this swirling combination of all those, like the amazing good blessings and the unexpected and somewhat stressful plot twists that come up. And I bring all that up, number one, so that you hopefully don't feel alone if you have a lot of that going on too, but because in the midst of all of that, I have yet to feel in our marriage, and we're just about at a decade of being married, that we go any extended period of time where we aren't feeling connected, where we aren't feeling close. Are there days that are harder and we're not on the same page and we're not as affectionate or having as many conversations? Of course, right? And we're going to talk about that. But I could still say to someone, yes, I still feel close. I still feel a sense of emotional intimacy. And it's because of the things that we're going to go through in this episode that we're focusing on. Now, before we get into the first point, and I want Aaron to introduce this great theory, because this is a little time sensitive, I wanted to make sure that you all know the day this episode is launching is the start of our 30-day couples challenge. Okay, you just have to read these testimonials and you will see why over 34,000 couples have loved these prompts. I mean, I read 2 this morning from people that they send to us, and I just am blown away. I even tear up reading a lot of them. And so you can actually pick between 2 different levels. We have a level 1 called prioritizing us, and then level 2, rebuilding us. So go to meetthefreemans.com/challenges. We'll also link that in the show notes, but that is where you can pick either the level 1 or the level 2 challenge. You just got to start. It's incredible, and you'll see why it's so popular.
I don't know if I'm going to say this for myself or for the listeners, but to add to it, because maybe you're like, oh, it's not a lot of things to feel busy around. We're also getting a new car, and that took some like negotiating out of state type stuff. We're finishing over a year long program, and we're working with a literary agent on a new book.
Mm.
So I don't know if I'm doing that for myself to justify how busy we feel, but I just felt like I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of storytelling. So that's all the things that are going on for us with parenting. And then I think for a lot of people, it's like, well, how do you then maintain this emotional closeness
Mhm.
with a partner and not have it diminish?
Yeah.
So as we move forward now, hopefully you liked hearing about our life update. It is a range, and I do want to move this term of emotional connection to actually be emotional closeness.
Mhm.
So we're going to be using closeness now as we go forward because it has to do with a number of other things. One of them being that, as we said on one of the past 2 episodes, emotional closeness in psychology and in social psychology is the key term they use for measuring marital satisfaction.
Mhm.
So I just like to tie that together. So emotional closeness, we don't use closeness as much as I think people use connection nowadays. But that's one of the main points. Second point being, as we now get into the meat here, that social psychology, a principle called the triangle of love theory.
Mhm.
We mentioned this on previous podcasts, but it's useful to bring it back up here. Early or late, I'm not sure, it was in the 1960s. There was a theory about how to measure love. Now, to me, it's important because love is such a almost etherical type of concept. The
Mhm.
feeling of love, or whether it's a verb or an action or a feeling,
Mhm.
this theory brought about 3 components. And we're only going to go into the one, which kind of giving it away on the podcast here, it's closeness. Emotional
Mhm.
closeness is one of them. Number 2 is passion. Number 3 is commitment.
So those are the 3 sides of the triangle.
Yeah, the 3 sides of the triangle. And when you think about the love in any relationship, certainly your romantic one, it is this mixture of passion, closeness, and commitment. And for the best version of a quote unquote romantic partnership, which is actually called a complete love, would be that all 3 of those are, we'll say, at the highest.
Mhm.
Now, that theory doesn't really acknowledge that those could be ranges. And
Mm.
I think that's what we want to introduce. So, as we move forward here, we're really talking about the dimension of closeness. And of course, it can be a range. And that's a lot of times what we are referring to when we say your love account.
Yes, great point about it being a range, which is why we love talking about the love account concept, right? Because for those of you who are new, the love account, just like a bank account, is fluctuating all the time, right? And it's the sum of your deposits versus your withdrawals. Now, don't take this literally like you're trying to keep score with your partner, because that's not it. Like Aaron and I aren't like sitting here with a notepad, like, oh, you made a deposit. Oh, you made a withdrawal. Like, we're not truly keeping score. It's just a way to think more practically as to what is influencing your experience of being loved and connected in your relationship, which is important because so often we'll hear from couples, oh my gosh, we just went on this great vacation, or oh, we had this great date night. Why didn't that sustain us for more than a few days? And it's because those are, of course, peak moments. Like that can really move the needle and really fill you up. But that doesn't mean Monday through Friday, you don't have to maintain closeness and connection. And we put up a recent post that really hit home about how a marriage is made up of a million subtle choices that happen behind closed doors. Emphasis on the word subtle, because the deposits and the withdrawals you make, some are very evident, right? Like getting into an argument would be a very clear withdrawal, but they can be subtle things. They can be getting defensive or being dismissive in this quick interaction. It can be making that little quick passive aggressive remark while you're cooking dinner. And you might not notice it right away, but they add up. And suddenly you're like, why are we so annoyed with each other? Or why do we feel disconnected or off? Our communication isn't working. And so, what very quickly happens if you're not paying attention is you're not only making more withdrawals, but you're also not making as many deposits to the love account, which can be a wide range of things. And this is what people feel and influences not feeling as close and connected.
Hmm.
And there are, again, very, very subtle things that you're doing every day. Think about when you come home. What's the energy that you're bringing into the space? How are you interacting with them? What's the tone of voice? What's your body language? Are you walking by them and not touching them? Are you not being attentive when they're starting conversations with you? Are you just kind of making like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, interesting. Oh, how was your day? Like, is it just giving them the bare minimum? That's going to start to feel really noticeable. And
Hmm.
you'll be like, all right, yeah, we're around each other. We're doing all the things in life, but why do I not feel that close to you? Or why do we not feel that connected? Where's the intimacy? We're just managing life. We're kind of feeling like roommates.
And I think that I would also add people focus a lot more about the activities that are happening rather than the type or quality of that activity or interaction.
Hmm.
That means you can go on a date and have a date night, and though, like you were saying, that could sustain you for a couple of days, you can go on the date night, which we've heard of plenty of times, and then not feel like any emotional closeness
Mm-hmm.
was really there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about the particular action of going on a date night. And so that's what really leads us into these 5 particular points about how you drive emotional closeness. And
Mm-hmm.
the first point I want to bring up is that it's depth of conversation over breadth, or you could say the broad range of topics that you could cover.
Yeah.
So, if you want to visualize something, think of 3 concentric circles. Now, one listener is like, I don't know what that is. That was maybe from from my engineering
I'd
days.
have to think back. I'm like, wait, concentric circle. Yeah, I'm like, let me think back.
Concentric and different size circles. So, just think of a middle circle and then a larger one and then a larger one.
Oh, right.
But their center is the same. So,
Mm-hmm.
hence the word concentric. So, what you can think of on the outer circles would be all of the possible topics or subjects that you could converse about with your partner.
Yeah.
And you've heard us talk a lot about thinking of your relationship from 10 different areas, anything from leisure to intimacy to
Parenting.
finances to
Mm-hmm.
parenting. You threw me off with communication,
Right.
conflict resolution. So you have all of these topics, and you could stay at more of a surface level on those. So let's say at a dinner, you could cover all of the topics, all of like the main topics of
Mm-hmm.
things that you have going on in your life. Hey, how's this? How was work?
Wow, we've been
Did
so
you get this thing
busy.
done? Yeah, we've
Mm-hmm.
been busy. Update me on how our child did at school,
Mm-hmm.
where our finances at. So again, you could talk about a broad range of things, but emotional closeness is about even taking one, which is at the outer circle,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could just take that one sliver and think of like going down to like the center of the earth.
Yeah.
So you move towards the innermost circle, and that is your individual experience and emotions, your thought processes, the things you're thinking about, how you're feeling around all of those topics, even to the point of your fears and the descriptions about the joy and the celebration. It's really the juice of your emotional and cognitive life.
Yeah.
And that's really what you want to get to. That, from this point, that is where you get emotional closeness from that depth to your inner core rather than staying at broad range of topics.
I'm so glad that you depicted that because as you were describing it too, I know it's kind of become a cliche now because people are posting this and graphics and images, but it also still is meaningful when people say intimacy is into me, you see.
Oh, yeah.
And what you just depicted is exactly that, that it's going deeper. Like, do we see into each other? Do we know each other's experience of things? I could say, oh man, I know it feels like it's been so stressful with navigating, Sky's big feelings. That's one level. Me going another level could be, man, you know what? It really brings up like, am I doing a good enough job? Like, am I really teaching her everything that she
Mm,
needs to know? And sometimes I'm so hard on myself,
mm.
right? And I can even like kind of have this mean internal dialogue. Like, right, that's me going deeper and sharing more of my internal experience. So remember that into me you see. Are you allowing each other in to see each other, which includes those vulnerabilities?
Great transition
Okay.
to the second point. Now, I don't know, haven't thought all the way through this. I don't know that you can have the depth of conversation. That
Mm,
was just the step one or layer one. Two, if you don't have this second step, which is what you just said, it requires to me honesty and vulnerability.
mm,
So it's not necessarily for us to converse here about can you have this depth of conversation to your inner core without honesty and vulnerability? Seems obvious that you can't. But we'll just stay on topic here with you need to have honesty and vulnerability as a part of your conversations to deepen emotional closeness. And well, what is there to be honest about? That's probably the biggest thing to talk about. I think honesty would also include a lot of the things you don't want to necessarily admit.
mm,
I think integrity is a big part of this conversation. I think that being able to be honest about where I haven't been able to be my word, about where I haven't followed through on the promises and agreements that I've made to you. I think that's super honest. I think that's also really vulnerable to say, hey, here's where I even feel like I've fallen short, and to put your heart, your self-image on the line
mm,
without defensiveness, without justification. To me, that's really huge. I think that's a big part of, again, not just having the breadth of conversations on topics, taking those topics, you know, deeper to the core of your emotional experiences, but now we go beyond to, because life isn't just all about happy things. It's great to share those things, but I think where emotional closeness, that real juice comes from, is by being able to express these places where, again, we have these fears, we have these vulnerabilities, we have these things that we're scared of, these things that, well, if I say it, I'm starting to give up the next points,
mm,
but will I still be seen in the same light by my partner?
mm.
Again, I don't want to transition to the next. I could
Yeah,
easily
yeah.
transition to point three, but what do you have on there?
I loved so much of what you just said. What I want to mention about vulnerability, just from a female perspective, is that I think this is something we crave so much more of from our partners. Like when you are vulnerable with me, which looks different than I am when I'm vulnerable, right? Like for
Hmm.
me, I can be more expressive, whether it's like tears coming to my eyes. For you, rarely is, I mean, I've seen that few and far between, and it's been with something very, very significant going on. For you, just when you verbally open up to me and you share not just like that outer circle that you're talking about, but truly how something is affecting you or like what it's bringing up for you, what you need. I mean, man, that feels me makes me feel so drawn to you, so connected. And that really goes for all partners. And I know that for us, it's so easy. And by us, I mean all human beings. Like when we have stuff coming up for us, whether we're feeling stressed about a situation or it's bringing up fear, life is going to life, right? It's going to bring that stuff up. We can very easily instead protect ourselves. We can even go on the defense or the offense, and that can have us be snappy with our partner, reactive, rather than truly, if we just get vulnerable, if we just share with our partner how something is affecting us, what we need that helps the other person have more context about how they can support or yeah, just be able to have that sense of closeness. So just don't ever discount the power of vulnerability. And I think this is what you were going to go to next is in order to create that space for each other, it's so important that you two practice being receptive and being able to listen to each other without judgment, without fixing it. So, sorry to give that point away, but you want to dive more into that receptivity and listening.
Yeah, that's the third point, but I wasn't done with the second point yet. I
Okay.
just wanted to say that honesty and vulnerability, that takes courage.
It does.
That's really the only thing I wanted to say about that. That's not something that's weakness. It just really is. Whether you're a Brene Brown fan and you've read her book and all her stuff, TED Talks, yeah, vulnerability takes courage.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to underscore that as we move into point number 3. It is receptivity, because if I am sharing the depth, if I'm being honest and having the courage to be vulnerable, but my partner is not receiving it. But doesn't necessarily mean that that person is defensive or they're combative or they're invalidating what you're saying. Those would all be things that would reduce receptivity.
Mhm.
But even if my partner is distracted, if it doesn't feel like what I'm saying is really being paid attention to,
Mhm.
that my partner is showing this level of interest, even kind of curiosity, engaging with the conversation, meeting me with the empathy or meeting me at the emotional state I'm at, then there's not going to be that emotional closeness because
Mhm.
it takes two people. So it's huge. It takes how you receive these 2 points in how your partner is bringing it to you that leaves you feeling like, wow, I was vulnerable. I went deep and I feel understood. I feel seen. I feel, a common word for people is feel known. And ultimately, I would say feeling accepted even in the flaws or the shortcomings or my broken promises or agreements or my lack of integrity or just not showing up my best. I still feel like in that sharing, I'm being accepted in this conversation. That's what really links in to feeling emotionally close.
You know what's interesting as you were saying that? Of course, a big part of this that we've discussed so far in the examples is like being vulnerable and being receptive to each other when we share maybe more of like the what people would categorize like the negative things or the hard things, even though they're not truly negative, right? But if
Mm,
there's vulnerability, fear, stress, worry, but that receptivity
hmm
and that being
I know where you're going.
open with each other is equally important with the positive things.
Right.
So if I come to you, this happened with the house, for example, and
Oh no.
I'm excited about something, right? I see a
Like, oh no, I
possibility.
didn't know that I had done this.
This possibility, right? I'm excited. Or, I mean, the house is just one example, but anything. Like if I got excited about something or I was interested in a new hobby, whatever it is, I'm bringing to you something in joy, in gratitude, in positivity. If you kind of poo pooed it with, well, I don't know. That doesn't seem that interesting to me.
Oh, this is
Or,
theoretical, right?
right. Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I thought you were about to say that I
No, you didn't poo
didn't
poo
meet
it.
your energy on this one. Okay.
um, Truly though, think in your relationship, like if you two are receptive to each other, if you meet each other at even those peak moments of excitement,
hmm
because it can be so deflating. If
Right.
if I do share something, even if it isn't the biggest interest of yours, right? Like
Right.
dance, for example. Like if I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this, cool thing about dance," and you were just like, "Oh, cool." I mean, that would just be I'd be falling flat, right? I
Yeah.
would just truly feel like you're not interested, you're not meeting me where I'm at, and that would not make me feel as close. So I just wanted to point that out of how important all these principles are important with the quote unquote positive and the negative
Yeah, I
things.
totally agree. Let's move to the fourth point here. And it goes back to, if you will, the speaker. We just did one point here on the listener, basically. But I also feel that the emotional closeness depends upon the level of proactive initiation. And I said revealing in my notes. It's I have to be the one driving the conversation. There's not going to be as much emotional closeness if one partner is the one that has to try to pull it out of the other one.
Mhm.
So there does need to be a balance between the two of you. We know there's personality differences. You could say there's some gender even differences in sharing emotion, sharing experience, likely even being assertive or proactive. So as I'm saying this, maybe I am talking more to the men. So it's
Mhm.
just a lighthearted invitation, maybe for
Mhm.
the men to be more initiators of all of these types of conversations. It can't be all on your partner to bring about, hey, how are you feeling? Tell me more about that. And you're like,
Mhm.
yes, no, fine. It's like that's just going to fall flat. And even if you are open and receptive, that when your partner has these conversations with you, like, yeah, maybe you do expand and you do take it to the level of depth and you are vulnerable, that's all good. But I still think if we're talking about what really drives emotional connection, I think it's that both of you are initiating.
And I love that point too, because it reminds me of how important it is to get better at being a conversationalist and asking good questions.
Hmm.
Because truly, like, sparking these interesting, connecting conversations comes from the quality of questions that you ask each other. Like, just going, hey, how was your day, is not going to take you super, super deep. So, that's also just another reason I just want to say, because I got excited about it, that's a great reason to do the 30-day prioritizing us couples challenge, because, and actually even the level 2 rebuilding us, there's conversation prompts starters in both of them. The prioritizing us is going to be about fostering more connection, understanding, love between you guys. The rebuilding us conversation starters are going to be even a little bit more deep and challenging, even around things around like repair or that need to see some positive change in the relationship. So anyway, again, truly recommend, they're both starting today, to go to meetthefreemans.com/challenges
Mm-hmm.
to get better at these conversations, to ask each other meaningful questions that you're not asking on a daily basis.
So then we'll close out here with point number 5 about driving and generating, creating emotional closeness. And this probably comes from my years of participating in team sports, likely.
Mhm.
And it is that for emotional closeness, you have to overcome hard challenges as a team.
Mhm.
So in sports, it's really called team chemistry. There's also probably looking at it from a military perspective of, say, like a brother at arms, but the principle is really the same, though. I mean, the level of challenge in military you could
Yeah,
obviously argue is,
different.
yeah, very different. But in either case, a team like a basketball team, their chemistry is going to be a big factor on their success as a team.
Mhm.
And you only build that chemistry by really going through hard challenges and you test yourselves and then you test and see how your teammates respond. And that builds your trust as well as your faith and your
Mm.
count on ability about your teammates. That
Mhm.
when you get into hard challenges, I know I'm going a little sports heavy
Yeah.
here. You're down to the last 10 seconds, you're down by 3 and you don't have the ball. So you're going to need to rely on each other to play solid defense, get the turnover and count on that you make the pass to the teammate that can hit a 3 to tie the game. I know I'm really taking this
Yeah.
far. There's a foul, and you can hit the 4-point play for the game winner.
This is
So
reminding me of watching the Olympics final together. The
yeah,
US crushed it. That was such a good final game.
yeah. So after going through something like that, you build cohesion, chemistry, and trust in one another.
Mhm.
And you need these kind of moments in your marriage.
Mhm.
If everything worked out just fine and as planned, which just it rarely does, though,
Yeah.
right? But you have to be able to face the challenges that are going to come up in your marriage. And
Mhm.
you have to show each other that when one of you is down, that the other person can take up the burden
Mm.
and that you can both flow back and forth with being that person that can sometimes carry the other person. Now, the previous episode, I really invited men into showing up in this role,
Mm.
but it can't always be the man, right?
Yeah.
then it's just also knowing that you can have triggers come up, you can feel disappointed, depressed, down, traumatic, sad, struggling, and that when you bring that conversation to your partner, that they're going to be able to receive it. So it kind of goes back to
Yeah.
the receptivity, but that you have to be able to have these hard challenges and then not turn against each other.
Mm.
And I think the couples that are oftentimes together longer but have shown each other consistently that they can be a team in those challenges, you just get a sense that their emotional closeness, and ultimately going back to how we started this, the triangle of love theory, their commitment and their certainty about the relationship is also much higher.
Yeah.
But I think it's because they've gone through more challenges and really shown each other over time and consistently that, hey, I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to accept you, however hard it is. I'm not going to put you down.
Mm.
I'm not going to make it your fault. I'm not going to blame you. I'm going to pick up my end. I'm going to, how, whatever I need to do. And then just those moments in your marriage are really what build this
Mm.
kind of last piece for me of closeness.
I really was even just like tearing up a little bit as you were describing that, because it depicted for me, I think, the most dominant experience I have in our partnership, which is that we really like fight for each other. That we don't get complacent. We also put up a post a couple days ago about complacency being the enemy of marriage. And as you were describing that, I was like envisioning these days where maybe we were feeling off, right? We talked about this earlier in the episode. We're not perfect. We don't always get each other. We don't always have communication go smoothly. We're human. That's part of the experience. But we do not let one day become days.
Hmm.
We don't let a few hard days become a week, right? To depict that we prioritize closeness. Yes, we love a clean home. Yes, we love a to-do list getting complete, but we will not sacrifice our relationship, our sense of closeness for those things. It is a top priority for us because we know that we are more powerful in every area of life when our foundation, our team experience is rock solid. So I hope that inspires you and has you really think differently about closeness not being something you can deprioritize. Does it take some energy, some intention, some focus? Of course. But it doesn't take a date night every day. We don't get a date night every week, you guys. Like, we don't count
Wow,
on date
yes.
night at all.
I
Few
don't
and far
even know if you
between.
could say every month.
Right. And so I want you to remember that it is all the interactions that you have, the little moments where you can either create closeness or feeling disconnected.
So we want to do this episode primarily because we get this question a lot, whether it is online or emails or even in our sessions with our clients. So just to summarize, so you can really take these points away, obviously listen again if you need, but really generating emotional closeness to us comes down to depth of conversation, the honesty and vulnerability, which takes courage to offer that up, the receptivity of the listening partner that leads to understanding and acceptance, certainly in the flaws and shortcomings and negative emotions, but then also having the proactive initiation, so it's balanced, it's not one-sided. And then lastly, as we just covered, you're just going to have to overcome hard challenges together
Mhm.
as a team. Kind of takes in part a realization that hard challenges are a part of your life. And it's
Mhm.
really the point we try to make in the book, The Argument Hangover, how conflicts actually can be a good thing. I
Mm.
think this is a huge part of it. If you handle conflicts and challenges appropriately,
Yeah.
it does, why it's so important, it does create this bond and this closeness. That's how you turn these things into positives. And in a sense, they're almost necessary if you really want to deepen
Yeah.
your closeness.
Well said. So send us a note if this was helpful. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can hear past and future episodes. It also helps us so much if you put a rating for the show. Hopefully you feel we're worthy of 5 stars and write a sentence or two. And then make sure you start the 30-day couples challenge. Again, it's starting the day that this episode launches. So go to meetthefreemans.com/challenges to pick either the level 1 or the level 2 challenge. challenge. But we're so grateful that you're here, and we will talk to you on the next episode.